Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the third in a series of webinars to celebrate British Science Week 2021 and the theme of Innovating for the Future. I'm Claire Willis from the North East STEM Ambassador Hub, and I'm going to be hosting today's webinar. And I'm delighted to introduce today's speaker, Tamma Carel from Imvelo Ltd, who's going to try to answer the question, can STEM careers save the world? Tamma is the founder of Imvelo Ltd, which is an environmental consultancy company that provides environmental management and legal advice. In her role, Tamma advises businesses on how to improve their environmental and sustainability performance in order to reduce their carbon emissions and combat climate change. Tamma has always been interested in STEM subjects from school age. She completed a BSc in biology and psychology at Newcastle University and then returned after 1 year in industry to complete an MSc in Environmental Consultancy. Don't forget to type any questions you might have in the chat facility and include your school name, and I will ask Tamma as many as I can at the end. So without further ado, Tamma, over to you.
Hi Claire, thanks so much for having me, and hi everyone. Really lovely to be a part of this session. I'm just going to set up for sharing my screen, so hopefully you guys can see that. And yeah, we'll make a start. So thanks for the introduction, the very kind words. Just to reiterate, my name is Tamma. I'm an environmental consultant and trainer based in Newcastle upon Tyne, and I set up Imvelo Ltd in 2015.
Tamma, we just can't see your screen there, so if you might want to try and share that again.
Right, apologies. Gotta love the tech. How's that?
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Okay, fab. Start again? Well, kind of. So yes, my name's Tamma, and I'm the founder and director of Imvelo Ltd, which is based in Newcastle upon Tyne. You'll be able to hear from my accent, though, that I'm not originally from the Northeast. In fact, I'm not even originally from this country. I come from South Africa, and as a bit of a tribute to my roots, to my heritage, I named my business Imvelo, which is in fact the Zulu word for environment. So Imvelo Ltd is set up to provide expert environmental consultancy and training to UK businesses to help them meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So it's about making business performance better, but for the true picture of sustainability, where we concentrate on people, planet, and profit. And I do this through a number of kind of technical frameworks that exist for businesses to begin to understand the impact that they have on the environment, to identify where the biggest threats to the environment are so that they can take measures to reduce those, but more importantly, to identify where the opportunities are for businesses to become more sustainable, whilst at the same time solving some of the global issues that we are currently facing. So this is all quite technical, but if anybody is interested in environmental consultancy as a career, these are the type of environmental frameworks or management systems that you're likely to come across for businesses to use. So today the session is Innovating for the Future. So I thought I would start a little bit by telling you about my day job, what it's like to have a day in the life of an environmental consultant. And I also want to introduce the Sustainable Development Goals, because I think that this is where all of the opportunity for innovating for the future really sits. What are the world's biggest challenges, and how can individuals and businesses rise to meet those challenges? And the Sustainable Development Goals give a roadmap to what sustainability could look like if we meet certain targets. And then just a bit of an idea of what I think jobs of the future are going to look like, and a couple of hints and tips that I'd like you to keep with you as you consider your career trajectory and the types of jobs you might want to do when you're finished at school. So what is a typical day in the life of an environmental consultant? Well, the first thing is it is anything far from typical. So my job is really varied. I prefer to work with businesses that are very industrial, so manufacturing companies, construction companies, waste management companies, process businesses like chemicals and pharmaceuticals and stuff. I think that the dirtier the industry is, the more opportunity there is to do something better, to implement environmental management and to implement sustainability. So it does mean that I do spend a vast amount of my time in steel toe cap boots with a hard hat, generally covered in mud or muck or dust of some kind, usually sticking my head into an oil barrel or a dustbin or a chemical storage unit to try and figure out what a company is doing and what we can do to make it better. I quite like this element of it. I'd much rather be out on site than sat at my desk, but it is an inevitability of being not only an environmental consultant, but actually also being a business owner. So entering the world of entrepreneurship, I suppose, kind of 5 years ago was not originally part of my plan. It just so happened that there was a job I wanted to do, the job that I do now, but there wasn't anybody who was hiring specifically for that job. So I just took a calculated risk and set up my own business to give me my dream job. And with that, with business ownership, with entrepreneurship, I suppose there is a bit more glamour than I was expecting. So I do, have to spend time at my desk. I do a lot of workshops, training, mentoring, education for senior leadership teams of businesses, and then a little bit of networking, a couple of glamorous award ceremonies. And over the past 5 years, I have myself been very fortunate to win a couple of awards for my business and for the work that I do for other businesses in terms of environmental management and sustainability. So I could spend a whole day in steel toe cap boots and then come home, have a quick shower, don the high heels and makeup and go to an award ceremony. But I love that diversity. That is the fun part. So thinking about why sustainability really matters to business, I always start in kind of an interactive environment. Obviously, I appreciate you guys can't talk to me at the moment, but always with the question, did you see Blue Planet? That was kind of 3 years ago where David Attenborough prepared the Blue Planet documentary. And for the first time, we became very aware of the impact that we were having on the environment. We know that the amount of materials that we're using, consuming, and disposing of is now having catastrophic impacts on the environment. It has for a number of years, but we're now at a critical point where we can really see this impact. It is right in front of our eyes. We can no longer deny it. So that was the issue of plastics in the ocean, but we all know that that is just a symptom of a much bigger problem. We understand that human activities are emitting carbon into the environment. Carbon causes global warming, and global warming is what is causing climate change. And climate change has significant impacts for the environment, for people, and for businesses. So my job is to help organizations understand what the impacts of their activities are, but also to understand what the impact of climate change could mean for the future of their business and how they have to change their activities. What we do know is that we are at a critical point. We are facing a climate emergency, and it is young people like yourselves, the movement of Greta Thunberg, that have really taken the mantle here and said, we want things to be different. It is our future, the future of our children, the jobs that we're going to do, the lives that we're going to live, and we are at an emergency situation. So what we do know now is that we have basically 10 years, scientifically speaking, to significantly reduce carbon emissions into the environment if we want to try and mitigate the worst impacts of climate change, what those could be. But again, what does this actually mean for a business? Well, in the UK, there are, well, globally as well, but we'll just talk about England today, there are a number of environmental laws that protect the environment. So again, I generally like to play a game of higher and lower, just to see if we can get an indication as to how many pieces of law you think exist in the UK. But the reality is there's over 200 pieces of legislation that exist in the United Kingdom to protect the environment. What's really interesting about environmental legislation and why it's so important is that its sole purpose, the only reason these laws exist, is to protect the environment from human activities. So if our activities were not causing harm to the environment, then we would not need this many or this number of regulations. But for businesses, it's quite difficult. There's over 200 pieces of legislation, and most of the time it's a case of they don't know what they don't know. You know, it has to be someone's job to sit down and go through all of this legislation and figure out what it means to them, and more importantly, what do they have to do about it. So that's where I come in as an environmental consultant, always as a starting point. I help businesses become compliant. I help them understand the laws, and then I help them put systems and processes and equipment in place to make sure that they are at a bare minimum compliant with legislation, protecting the environment, not causing pollution, and also importantly for the business, not opening themselves up to risk of getting fined or prosecuted or slated publicly on Twitter for everybody to know. So sustainability is also about reputation protection for organizations. But what we do understand is that business activities definitely do cause pollution. And pollution is defined legally when human activities harm the environment, property, or humans, or all three. So ultimately, priority number one is to prevent pollution, to not cause harm to the environment, to people, or to property. So this is where I come in and how I actually help. So firstly, I help them put in the controls to prevent pollution and protect the business at the same time. I help them set goals to improve their environmental performance. I work with them a lot to make sure that we understand all of the regulation that applies to us, and more importantly, make sure we are doing what the law says we have to do. And all of this is underpinned by a really big element in education and engagement with sustainability. So one thing that I believe beyond is that for sustainability to truly come to realization, for us to move on to this journey, we have to win hearts and minds. It has to be individuals within a company that will strive a company forward. So that education, that knowledge, that engagement is fundamentally important to the success of any kind of sustainability program. So this is what it could look like when everything goes wrong, but this is what I help businesses do. So keep their house in order. It's as simple as that. Keep things organized, tidy, compliant, managing the risk of causing pollution, managing the risk of causing harm to the people that are working on those sites, and also to the neighbors that are surrounding those sites. So my goal in business is to help prevent climate change and ultimately make a positive contribution to the world. And the reason I've chosen to work with other businesses is because I feel that through organizations that have hundreds of thousands of people in them, whatever ambition we set, however we choose to make things better, will have a really big impact. When we talk about sustainability, you may or may not have come across this. They talk about the triple bottom line of sustainability. Sometimes it's called the 3 Ps of sustainability. And that is people, planet, and profit. And they say if you think of it like a 3-legged stool, okay? For us to have true sustainability, it's a 3-legged stool. Each of those legs is people, planet, profit, and they are all equally weighted, all equally considered. If you have one of those legs either too short or too long, you don't have a functional stool. It's going to topple over. So when we think about this perfect point of sustainability. It is about balancing people, planet, and profit to get to this sweet spot in the middle where everybody is given equal consideration. So this leads us on to the Sustainable Development Goals. And again, you may or may not have come across these, but these have been around since September 2015, where 193 world leaders signed up to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And this is essentially a roadmap, a blueprint of all of the most pressing societal and environmental issues that need to be solved to get to that middle point, that triple bottom line of sustainability. It's set out where there are 17 high-level goals, so no poverty, zero hunger, health and well-being, and then environmental things like sustainable cities, responsible consumption, climate action, life underwater, life on land, all of these areas of our beautiful planet that need to be protected, both social, profitable, economic, so things like affordable energy, decent work and economic growth, and then for the planet, what can we do to make the planet better? Underneath these 17 goals, there are 169 targets, okay? So that for businesses and for individuals, if I'm honest, is a fantastic opportunity because the science is already there. The science has been done to determine, in order to get to no poverty, these are the things we have to focus on. So for businesses, this roadmap is really easy to kind of latch on to, sign up to choose a direction, to choose targets that are going to solve global problems and also make their performance better, all at the same time winning hearts and minds along the journey and ultimately improving the reputation of the business. So the Sustainable Development Goals give us this route towards sustainable development. And sustainable development has been academically defined about meeting the needs of people now and in the future whilst getting back into environmental limits. So sustainability is not just for here and now, sustainability is for future generations as well, making sure that we leave the planet in the same position, if not a better position than what we found it. So again, the Sustainable Development Goals really help us define a to-do list for people and planet, and it is an urgent call for businesses to get engaged. What's also really interesting about the Sustainable Development Goals, and again, where the opportunities really lie, is that all of these goals and the associated sub-targets are set for due date by 2030. So it means it's tangible. In the next 10 years, we can focus our efforts, our corporate efforts, our strategic efforts to really help integrate the Sustainable Development Goals and make a positive contribution to the global picture. And again, why is it so important? Well, we understand the impact of development. We know that in order to continue to build, to generate, to refurbish our landscape, we've got 7 billion people on the planet now. We know by 2050 there's going to be 9 billion people. That's more people who need homes and schools and offices and jobs. So we have to keep building, we have to keep developing so that future generations can have the same access to resources that we have had. But we know as it is, the impact of building, the impact of development is pretty significant. So it accounts for globally within each country about 40% of total energy consumption, uses about 12% of drinking water. It is responsible for emitting 38% of greenhouse gases and about 40% of solid waste. So that's for each country as a general mark. Again, this might seem really intimidating. We can see it's a huge, huge impact. But again, what drives me in my job as an environmental consultant is where you have the biggest impacts is also where you have the biggest opportunities to do better, to implement improvement measures. And again, this is where the SDGs really show businesses what this future could look like. So if we look at how construction development can actually support the SDGs, well, we can focus on green buildings to improve people's health and well-being. We can move to renewable energy and become self-sufficient, stop consuming fossil fuels, stop emitting carbon dioxide, and become sufficient at a very local level. We know that infrastructure, green industries are going to create more jobs and boost the economy. We'd like our infrastructure to be more resilient to climate change. One of the consequences of climate change is that we expect to see more extreme weather events. So hot places are going to get hotter, cold places are going to get colder, dry places are going to get drier. And then like England, where it rains a lot, we expect to see more flooding. So again, we can build our society to be resilient to that, make houses better protected from flooding incidences, or in fact, use the land a little bit better and not put houses in flood risk zones. We also know that building of businesses, of infrastructure, of houses, hospitals, schools, contributes positively to societies. And ultimately, we can work towards protecting the environment, to combating climate change, to protecting resources. And through a global partnership, we can continue to move on this journey towards true sustainability, that triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit, all equally protected. So we're thinking about innovating for the future, right? And I think the Sustainable Development Goals give us an insight into what jobs of the future could really look like. And there are a couple of interesting facts and figures around this. So the first thing we need to be aware of is that as it stands at this moment in time, there are currently 1.2 billion jobs that depend on a stable and healthy environment. So in terms of economic recovery, which again is very important after the year that we've just had, our immediate focus should be on how can we protect those 1.2 billion jobs in forestry, fishery, agriculture, tourism. What can we do to protect the environment, to protect those jobs? But the flip side of it is what jobs are likely to come. So there is a current estimate that 18 million more jobs could be created as a result of achieving the Paris Agreement's 2-degree centigrade goal. So the Paris Agreement, if you guys don't know, again, is a global agreement where every country has committed to reduce carbon emissions so that the global temperatures do not rise beyond 2 degrees centigrade. That would be the tipping point for climate change. So if we do that, if we stay under that 2-degree centigrade limit for all of the solutions that need to be created to realistically achieve that, there's potential for 8 million jobs. There's also an additional 6 million jobs potentially arising from embracing a circular economy model. So that's where we start to look at resources differently. It's not about taking natural resources, it's about reprocessing resources that already exist in our economy. The idea is you look at waste as a resource, stop thinking of rubbish as rubbish. Rubbish has value. We just need to find the value. So again, there are lots and lots of opportunities here, but these jobs don't exist yet. Not all of them. There is definitely a lot of movement, but at this moment in time, we can't tell you what job titles they're going to be, what they look like, what kind of things are going to be important. So for jobs of the future, the focus is really going to be on transferable skills and doing something that you care about. If you just choose one SDG and follow that route, the opportunities will come to fruition in time. As with everything in a career, but especially within sustainability, the science is constantly evolving. So we just have to keep moving with the times. Everything we learn will get us closer to what these jobs of the future could look like. Also important to note that if you do want to be an environmental consultant, there are a lot of different types of environmental consultant. So again, just choose an area that interests you, use the SDGs as a framework, talk to other businesses, but also remember that any route you take has transferable lessons. So you can start in one direction and end up in another. And that is almost expected in the careers of sustainability. So my final kind of hints and tips to wrap up this presentation, the first thing I really want to reiterate is that it's okay if you don't know what you want to be yet. Any adult you talk to probably had 1,000 ideas of what they wanted to be and ended up different routes. You know, your life takes you on a journey and you kind of just have to follow it through. But as I've said, most interestingly, with the SDGs as a roadmap, we just don't know what those jobs are going to be. And case in point, you know, kids nowadays want to grow up to be YouTubers or influencers. That was literally not a job that existed 5 years ago. This is new, you know, this is new terminology. It's a new opportunity. So it's okay if you don't know right now, just keep your eyes and ears open for the opportunities. The other thing is to follow your interests, okay? So especially in sustainability or environmental careers, it is very much passion-led. Everybody who does the type of job that I do genuinely cares about sustainability issues. And that makes it really easy, I say easy quite loosely, to find your, you know, your niche, your pocket. Just do what interests you and the opportunities, again, will come off the back of that. Obviously, I am an advocate for STEM. I do think STEM careers are the solution to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Most importantly, just do what you love. The dream is where, you know, your career and a passion come together. And I would say that I'm case in point of that. I had never intended to set up my own business. I had never intended to be an entrepreneur. I changed the type of environmental consultant I wanted to be 12 times before I, you know, finally settled where I am. And then I took a strategic risk and just created my own job to do exactly what I love every day. But the only reason I'm able to do that is because I never stop learning. And that is a life lesson for absolutely everybody to take away. I do 10,000 things a day that I don't know how to do, that I have never done before, especially in running a business. The trick is, are you capable of learning? Are you capable of figuring it out? And if we talk about true skills for future careers, this is it. Just keep learning, take problems and figure them out. And then whatever route you go, whatever career you decide, this is the skill that will keep driving you forward. So those are my final hints and tips. I do have a couple of resource suggestions. So if you haven't heard about the SDGs before, or even if you have and you'd like to do a bit more research, please check out their resources. They have them aimed at schools, you know, for guys your age, and there's just some fantastic stuff on there, and it might just begin to plant the seeds of what you might like to be when you grow up. But don't put any pressure on yourself. The answers are still to come. So that is me, bang on time, 30 minutes there, and I believe we now open up to some questions.
Yeah, and that's fantastic, Tamma. Brilliant. Some really, really great key messages and key life lessons there. What we have Baden Powell Primary School, who've been very active this morning, and they were very active yesterday as well. So that's fantastic. So the first question is from Tom Perkins, and he's asked, which awards did you win?
Well, I've been really lucky. So business awards were not anything I ever knew anything about. When I was in my second year of business, I was shortlisted in the Northeast for the Young Entrepreneur Award. And then I went on to become the regional winner. Imvelo has also been awarded the STEM Business Award under the Women in Business Awards category. And last year, no, not last year, 2019, it was the Outstanding Entrepreneur via the NatWest Entrepreneurship Awards. So really exciting to get recognized both for the business that I've set up, which I never expected, but also to get that STEM recognition for the type of work that Imvelo is doing. And again, I just think it's really important because it raises the profile of myself and my business, which is obviously good for business, but more importantly, it raises the profile of STEM careers and women in STEM, which is something I'm extremely passionate about.
I love the move from hard hats to high heels.
It's a day in the life.
I think that's amazing, absolutely amazing. Okay, another question. If we do nothing to stop climate change, what will happen and how quickly will it happen?
So one of the problems with sustainability is that cause and consequence are not directly correlated. It has taken years and years for us to get into this situation, but we are still under the tipping point. The science is telling us that we have to see some real action in the next 10 years. So carbon reduction strategies, there's a new movement called science-based targets, which is exactly that, you know, the best minds in the world saying this is what it's going to take. Science-based targets are telling businesses that they need to halve their carbon emissions in the next 10 years in order for us to meet that 2-degree centigrade threshold. So we're not at crisis yet, but the time for action is here and now if we're going to affect any kind of change. Bear in mind the negative impacts take time to come to fruition, so do the positive impacts. We have to do stuff now to see the benefit in 10 years' time. But yes, it is at a critical point. This is a climate emergency, but we have 10 years to make a real difference. And that's where all the opportunity is. And for you guys, you know, you're going to come out to school, get into jobs that are going to be solving these problems. I think that is the most exciting opportunity for innovation.
Yeah, and I guess what advice would you give, because we've got children from quite a wide range of ages this morning. So what would you say, what's the sort of 3 things that they could do sort of today that would really, because everyone just needs to do their bit, don't they?
Absolutely. So again, the principle of sustainability is it's better to have 7 billion people doing sustainability imperfectly than having a much smaller number doing it perfectly. So it is that Tesco's advert, every little helps. Things you can do in your homes that are going to be really easy, quick wins. Thinking about how you use energy. Turn off the light when you leave a room. Look at your thermostat. If you're not in a room, turn off the heater. If you've got the heater on, make sure the window's closed. So really common sense approaches to energy usage. And I'm sure your parents will keep you right on most of this because energy costs money. So if you save yourself some money by turning off all of the lights and things that you don't need, you will also be doing a good thing for the planet. The other thing that we are facing is pollution, and this is a really big one. So whilst we're in lockdown and we have all these opportunities to go on a daily walk, if you can take a bag and some gloves with you and just pick up a little bit of litter every time you go, one of the tricks I like is just pick 3, 3 pieces of plastic every time you go outside. It doesn't seem like a lot. It might not seem like a lot to you, but if everybody just picked up 3 pieces of plastic, it would have a huge impact. The final thing is really thinking about the things that you buy, okay? Especially around packaging. So buying, loose apples as opposed to apples in a plastic bag. Again, all packaging ultimately becomes waste, ultimately becomes rubbish. So anything that you can do to stop it coming into your house in the first place will mean that it doesn't have to be disposed of at the end of the line. So think about what you're buying. If you do have packaging, make sure that you recycle it, pick up litter wherever you can, and just remember to turn off the lights when you leave a room. That's my best advice.
Fantastic. And just really simple things that we all know about, but it's just, you know, we forget, don't we? So real simple advice. And, you know, we have an awful lot of children watching this morning. And as you say, 3 pieces is massive, even just
imagine.
Morning.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So a question, have you ever met?
I have not, unfortunately. I don't know many people that have, but you know, I'm a big fan. I think it's incredible that a young woman at her age, you know, started this movement and has stood in some of what I consider the most intimidating environments. You know, imagine standing in front of the UN. And she stood up for what she believes in, and she's right. Okay, she is right. It is your generation, it is you guys who really have the opportunity to solve our problems. And it is fantastic to see a young lady using her voice so eloquently to try and affect change. Again, the thing to take away from that is that she didn't just come out with one speech and solve the problem. You know, this is persistent, consistent efforts to educate, make aware, and change hearts and minds.
And I think on that note, what would you say to people like Donald Trump, who say climate change isn't real?
To be honest, I wouldn't say anything. It's not worth the effort. I was always brought up, my mom used to say, you can't logic the illogical. And you know, I'm a scientist by trade. I work on fact, figure, and logic. Quite frankly, you'd be wasting your time and effort trying to convince Donald Trump, you know, otherwise. So don't put your time and effort there. Work with people who are going to buy into your vision and buy into your mission. The other thing with Donald Trump that did give me quite a lot of comfort at one point, when he became president and did, you know, undid a lot of stuff, they said that if you look at the history of humanity as a 24-hour day, okay, so all the time we've been on this planet, 24-hour day. For Donald Trump's 4 years in Parliament, it is the equivalent of about 3 seconds in a 24-hour day. So that puts it into perspective. 4 years feels like a long time, and he did undo quite a lot, but it is being rectified. But in the grand scheme of what opportunity we have, it's 3 seconds versus 24 hours. Let's focus on the other 24 hours. It's not worth the time or effort.
Yeah, great. And which do you think is the most important sustainable development goal?
Oh, that is hard. Honestly, I think that climate action is possibly the most important sustainable development goal. And my reason for that is that both people and businesses depend on this planet, on this environment. Whilst we think about the triple bottom line, you know, that 3-legged stool with all equality, basically, I think it's a little bit flawed. I think it's a bit more like a pyramid. And you have the environment on the bottom, the foundation, a solid foundation. Out of that solid foundation, society is built, and it needs to be a strong society. And out of strong societies, you then get strong businesses. So I think for that, you know, to actually achieve that triple bottom line of sustainability, we do have to come back to fixing our planet so that it can continue to sustain us. But I am also an environmental consultant and possibly a little bit biased towards the environment. But, you know, I think if I had to choose, that would be it. Climate action all the way.
Brilliant. And a final question, and for the people that don't know, Tamma actually looks after hedgehogs.
I do.
So we'll talk a little bit about hedgehogs in a second, but the final question is, do you think aeroplanes should be banned?
No, I don't. Not entirely. I think COVID is going to change a lot about the landscape of travel. Unfortunately, over the past year, a lot of airplanes have been decommissioned. You know, the airlines have really, really suffered because travel has not been permitted. I think when the world starts to open up, we will see a reduced air travel option, at least for a little while until the economy can recover. I think connectivity in the world is a really valuable thing, a really beautiful thing. I think the opportunities are around the aeroplanes themselves. How are they designed? How are they built? What resources do they use? I don't think we should eliminate it entirely. What I do think we should eliminate, though, is the different classes in an aeroplane. So quite interestingly, if you travel first class in an aeroplane, the carbon footprint of that is much bigger than if you traveled in economy class. And it is all about efficiency. You have 8 seats in first class versus, 200 seats in economy. I think that's what should change. It should just be economy. They should be efficient loads. The airplanes should be full and they should get you from A to B. Quite obvious, quite logical.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, we'll stop traveling first class then, Tamma, won't we?
Yeah, all of us.
Some great thanks from people. Amazing to learn about this from Emily. Barbara from Year 6 class at Baden Powell says, thank you, this was amazing. So
welcome, guys.
A big thank you. And just how are the hedgehogs?
The hedgehogs are doing really well. So a couple of years ago, guys, I found 4 baby hedgehogs in my garden and decided to take them on and foster them throughout winter. I did that in partnership with a local wildlife centre, and that partnership, I'm really pleased to say, has continued. So now I am an official hedgehog fosterer. I rescue hedgehogs, I foster them in my garden. I've got like a custom built pen, and then I also put out food because I've got a big natural hedgehog community that comes and has dinner every night. So they are a dream, an absolute pleasure to have in my garden, a pleasure to support. Hedgehogs are endangered. They do need our help. And again, it's something really simple that you guys can do. If you just put out some fresh water and some chicken flavored cat biscuits, that's their favorite. That's what they really like. If you just put those out in your gardens every night, if there are hedgehogs around, I promise you they will find you and they will be really grateful for some food, especially now after they've been hibernating. They've got to get their bellies full and put on some weight again so that hopefully we can get some more hedgehog babies in the summer.
Brilliant. Fantastic. So hard hats, high heels and hedgehogs. That's what
this is the
talk. Well, once again, thank you so much, Tamma. You're doing some fantastic work, and we're just so delighted that you could join us for British Science Week this week. And just for the pupils and the schools from wherever you are in the UK, thank you for joining us again this morning. We are going to be running a session this afternoon at 1 o'clock. We're going to be wowed by engineering with Paula McMahon from Sir Robert McAlpine. So yeah, and I know you know Paula, so we're in for a really great session. So thanks once again for everyone joining us, and Tamma, to yourself. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you so much. It has been lovely. Take care, guys.